Hey everyone, so today I'm doing a bridal look on my good friend Rianna. Lots of you are always asking me for a bridal look. One viewer in particular, a makeup artist called John, he's always requesting them, so hello John. Over time I will try and get in a few more models of different skin tones to create more looks for you. We also filmed this super quick, ethereal, boho kind of bridal hairstyle, but I'll put that up as a separate tutorial just so that this tutorial isn't super long. I know the majority of you are not makeup artists, and I know some of you will prefer to do your own bridal makeup, so I'm going to try and use products that are accessible for everybody. So to start with, I'm going to apply this hyaluronic acid by The Ordinary. It's really important to make sure the skin is super hydrated on your wedding day. This little beauty can attract up to 1,000 times its weight in water. It also has the additional support of vitamin B5, and this also enhances surface hydration. If you don't already know, hyaluronic acid is found naturally in the skin, but its purpose in the skin isn't to hydrate, whereas this formula contains 3 types of hyaluronic acid, so using this is going to allow us to attract water from the air and absorb that into our skin. On all of my brides, I always use the Tilbury's Magic Cream. Again, I want the skin to feel super plumped and hydrated, and this cream really does that. Whether you're oily or dry, I still apply this product. More often than not, I will apply the creams to the face and allow those to settle in while I do the eye makeup first, and that gives the skin a chance to absorb all the products. If my bride was particularly oily, before I'd go in with the foundation, I can blot the skin for extra security. So I always ask my brides what skin type they are. Rianna is combination, so she gets a little bit oily for her T-zone. So I'm going to go in with the Murad Oil Control Lotion through the centre of the face. Both of the creams that I've applied contain SPF 15, so I know they're not going to flash back and I don't have any issues with these products. I'm an avid promoter of wearing SPF, but on your wedding day I would forego it, just so that you know you're not going to have any flashback issues. This is another staple in my kit for brides and clients. For any makeover, I always use the Becca First Light Priming Filter. The violet tone really brightens lackluster skin. Once again, it's great for hydration. It's really suitable for any skin tone, from the fairest of fair to the deepest of deep. And I love that it's got a citrus scent to it, it's really refreshing. Next I'm going in with the Arborian Matte Cream. So we've applied products to hydrate the skin. We've also applied a product to absorb any oil through the centre of the face. This one, although it is a mattifying primer, has more of that silicone texture, so it's great for refining the skin texture and evening out the pores on the skin. The Murad one doesn't have the silicone texture, but it is fantastic at absorbing oils, so I use them both for a different reason. On the tops of the cheekbones, I like to use the Becca Backlight Priming Filter. Not everybody likes to use a frosted highlight, and loads of us like that glow from within appearance to our face, and that's what this is going to do. It's going to glow from underneath your foundation. I always apply a little bit of a brush into the area that I want it and then use my fingers to press that into the skin. I also like to take it around the temple area. This just gives a beautiful natural glow all the way around in that C shape. The products we've used are going to keep our natural oils at bay, so applying a little bit of this under your foundation will give a natural glow without making you look greasy. The base foundation really depends on your bride and what they like in terms of coverage and what their skin type's like. Today I'm going to use the NARS Natural Radiant Foundation. I've chosen this because it's quite weightless and it's really good coverage. Rianna's got a little bit of discoloration around her eyes, and she also has a birthmark on one side of her face. This foundation covers those problematic areas but still allows her skin to show through, so you can still see some of her freckles. She doesn't feel caked in makeup, you can't see it sitting on her skin, but she still looks lovely and flawless. This is great for normal to combination to oily skin types. It's medium to full coverage. It's got a natural to natural radiant finish, and it's a 16-hour wear, and it comes in 33 shades. This foundation is also transfer proof. It's water resistant, sweat resistant. It's also non-drying, and for me I think it's a great option for bridal if you're of a normal to oily combination skin type. As I say, sometimes I'll do the eye makeup first, sometimes I'll do the skin. I just happen to do the skin first, but it's great because you can also see how well it covers around the skin, but yet she still looks really natural and doesn't look like she's caked in makeup. My preference is to use a sponge because I like to press that into the skin. It gives the most natural finish and doesn't compromise on the coverage. For bridal, I like to hand paint in eyebrows. This is so they look as natural as possible, and I like to use a eyebrow powder with a little bit of the Inglot Duraline and a tiny paintbrush to do this. I always like to overcompensate the shape that I'm creating. I use tiny little hair stroke marks, but I'll often start a little bit lower because then I'll go in with a brush and some foundation and shape it exactly how I want it. These tiny hair strokes are the foundation of the brow. They are the first step in creating texture. Because we've mixed the powder with Duraline, it's now waterproof, so it's not going to go anywhere, but it also makes the powder more intense in colour. So when we go back in with a brow powder, you'll still see these tiny hair stroke marks through the powder, so up close they will look so much more realistic. Rianna has been growing her brows. If you saw it in my previous tutorial, it must have been over a year ago now. Her brow shape now is a lot better, but I still like to make them a little bit fuller. It's okay to see tiny little gaps between your brow hairs. You don't want them to look like a block brow because that is really unnatural. When you look back at your wedding pictures, you don't want to be able to tell what era you got married in. You want to be able to look timeless, so don't fill them in to within an inch of their life. I'm going in with a concealer brush and a little bit more of the foundation, and I'm going to use this to carve that shape to create a bit more of an arch, so it's a little bit fuller than Rihanna's natural eyebrows. Having taken the hair strokes a little bit lower allows me to create the shape I want, and swiping underneath them with the foundation brush is going to give us that clean, crisp finish. I'm going in with an angled liner brush and the darkest brown and pressing more hair stroke marks into the eyebrow to create a little bit more texture. Not every bride requires this kind of detail to their eyebrows, but many brides just need a bit of tweaking. I then go in with the Benefit Ready Set Brow Clear Brow Gel to create a little bit more texture through the eyebrows, but also to make sure all the hairs stay in place. Here's a little before and after of Rihanna's brows so you can see how much difference it makes. They really do help to frame the face. Next up, I'm taking this creamy beige paint pot by MAC in the shade Laying Low, and I'm taking that over the eyes to neutralise the eyelid, but also to work as a base for the eyeshadow. It's going to create longevity, and it also adds a little bit of coverage to the skin to even out skin tone. Moving on to eyeshadow, I'm going to apply Woodwinked by MAC. This is a warm antique gold. Again, depending on your skin tone will depend on what colours you opt for. I'm going to go for warm shades for Rihanna because I just think it looks so beautiful with her skin tone. So we're applying this gold all over the mobile eyelid, so from the eyelash line up to where the eye naturally creases, which is called the socket. And this eyeshadow can be used wet or dry. Wet if you want it to be more intense, but we're going to be applying a pigment over the top of this. The one I'm going to be using is by Peaches and Cream, and this one is called Peached. I'm using the same brush and I've just turned it over, and I'm pressing this directly over the eyeshadow that we've already applied, and as you can see it is stunning. It really does catch the light and it just brings Woodwinked up a shade. It just looks so beautiful. For bridal, I always use a mix of colours that are in a matte finish to contour the eyelid. Today I'm using a mix of Embark with Swiss Chocolate. These are both reddish browns, which again really suit Rihanna's skin tone. I'll often use reddish brown tones when I'm working on brides with blue or green eyes because it really does make those colours pop. I've tapped off all the excess product and I'm working what's on the bristles in circular motions on the outer C shape. I keep the majority of the colour on the lower half and then use what's left on the bristles, which is usually very minimal, to pull it up into the socket. It's key to use a light hand, especially when you're working on the outer half of the lid, fading it up towards the eyebrow. And talking of eyebrows, you can see how natural Rihanna's eyebrows look this close up. I'm going in with a clean, fluffy blending brush over the edges to make sure it's so soft. Use a really light hand when you're doing this part as well. Notice that my hand is at the very end of the brush handle. Now I've got a base contour in, I want to go in with this shade called Bitten. This is a lot more reddy. We didn't want to go straight in with this because we don't want to use a red eyeshadow to contour the socket, but we're going to use this to warm up what we've already laid down. So again, tap off all the excess product off of your bristles and use what's left on them to start working that over the eyeshadow that you've already applied. Then go in with your clean blending brush to soften. Now I've not applied any more product to my brush. I'm using what's left on it to pull that through the socket on the centre of the eyelids. We want this to be really subtle, so go back in with your blending brush and soften that as well. Always encourage your brides to have something on their eyelids. A lot of them want really natural, but remember with flash photography, that's going to drain a lot of colour from the face, so you want something there. I'm now taking a very small amount of Americano and I'm applying this onto the lid itself on the outer third. This would just help to make the lid look a little bit more smoky, but really subtly, and also a little bit more three-dimensional. The gold on the very centre of the eye will really pop in contrast to this little bit of the reddish brown that we've got going on the outer edge. I'm taking a small amount of Peached pigment and applying that to the inner corners of the eyes, and then applying a small amount of Champagne Pop by Becca to the arch of the eyebrow bone. It's really key to work this in with the brush backwards and forwards because it is a frosted highlight and can look a bit OTT if you don't work it in. I A subtle amount of this to the eyebrow bone looks beautiful in photography. That with a small amount on your cheekbone really accentuates the bone structure of your face. I decided to also add a touch of that to the inner corners of the eyes. Depending on your eye shape will depend on whether you need eyeliner or whether you can actually wear eyeliner. I always prefer to use Bobbi Brown's Sepia Ink because it's like a deep muddy brown which is a lot more flattering, and I always mix that with Inglot's Duraline. Makes it a bit more fluid, which is easier to apply, but it also makes it waterproof so it stays put all day. When I'm applying this to clients, I always get them to keep their eyes open and look down. I'll also get them to look left and right to stretch the skin out. If you try to apply eyeliner with the eyelids closed, you're going to get that crinkly effect. I also always do the wing with the eye open looking straight ahead, that way I can see where the wing is sitting. Pet peeve of mine is when people don't tightline the eye. It's only because I can always see the pinky tone underneath the lid, and that really bothers me, so I always like to use the eyeliner to tightline. Again, I get them to look down and I lift their lid slightly and pop the brush underneath. For my brides that have really fair skin tones, I always apply a cream colour along the waterline to really make their eyes look big and more open. If they've got small eyes, it's a great tip. For my brides that have a medium to deeper skin tone, I tend to always use a dark colour along the waterline. It's not as intense as if it would be on someone with a fairer skin tone, so I feel like it's kind of more necessary, as it just helps to accentuate the eyes when you've got a deeper skin tone. I'm using the same reddish brown shades underneath the lower lashes, making sure that connects with the outer corner where the wing is. Then I'm using a fluffy blending brush to soften everything. Don't worry if you take it a bit low because we haven't applied concealer yet. Waterproof mascara is a must on your wedding day. My preference is the Ico Sport Waterproof Mascara. It's a really nice true black. It doesn't smudge or flake, it lasts all day, and what I love is that it comes in a squeezy tube, so there's really minimal wastage. I don't really use disposable wands. I tend to use a metal toothed mascara wand. I clean between the teeth with alcohol, and then I use an antibacterial spray to keep it hygienic and make sure there's no bacteria on it in between each client, and I have about 6 of them. I'm going to use the NARS Soft Matte Complete Concealer. This has a nice high coverage to it and it really does help to brighten underneath the eyes. I'm taking it half a shade brighter than Rianna's skin tone. Again, I don't want it to look like we know what era she got married in. Wearing a concealer that's too light underneath the eyes and baking, it's a trend and eventually it will probably go out, and you don't want to look back at your photos and ask yourself why you bothered doing that because it's no longer trendy. We don't naturally have super bright under eyes, so I think for your wedding day you just want to enhance your natural beauty and avoid going with trends. But obviously that's my opinion and you can do whatever you're comfortable with. Now we do want to set our concealer in place. My favourite is the Vichy Derma Blend, and similar to baking we're going to press that into the concealer, but we're not going to leave it there to go white. With Rihanna's skin tone it's just going to look ashy. If I used a banana powder it would just look too yellow. If you do find you get creasing, then blot your concealer before you powder. Or don't apply so much. If you don't need it, don't do it because it's trendy. Not everybody needs concealer. I always recommend that my brides have some individual cluster lashes. I'm not a fan of applying lashings of mascara on your wedding day, so having some individual clusters on the outer half of your eye really accentuates them. To create some dimension to the skin, we want to keep it really natural, so we're going to use a foundation. I'm using a darker shade of the Armani Luminous Silk. I didn't set the foundation in place, I wanted it to settle into the skin, that way I can also apply another foundation over the top without it going cakey. So I'm using a duo fibre brush because this applies a very small amount of the product, and then I'm using a sponge to press that into the skin to give it a more natural finish. You can of course just use a bronzer. I like to apply the foundation first as this has more longevity than a bronzer, and then if I need to I can go over that with a bronzer. You might be thinking this is also a trend, but it's not. The face naturally has contours and that becomes less visible when we apply a fuller coverage foundation. So we're using this to create the contour but also add warmth to the face, which makes you look more healthy. And then in the actual hollows of the cheeks we'll apply a product that is a little bit more cooler toned. Now I'm going to go in with the Too Faced Chocolate Soleil in the darker shade and just apply this over the top of that foundation. It's going to keep it in place but also just add a little bit more depth. For blusher I'm going to use a matte finish. This is the Illamasqua Lover Blush. Medium skin tones really suit peachy coral shades. I'm applying this more to the apple of the cheek and pulling it backwards because this just gives a flush of colour to the face. It makes you look youthful and radiant and just really healthy. Then I always knock that back with a separate brush, either a foundation brush or a clean brush. This helps to make it look like a natural flush colour. If the bride I was working on had a drier skin type, I would use cream based blush and highlighter. As Rianna is combination to oily, I'm using powders, and I'm using the Becca Champagne Pop on her cheekbone. I'm also using what's left on the bristles to take that up across the temple onto the top of the eyebrow. As you can see, having a highlighter in this area really accentuates the bone structure of your face. To sculpt the face, we want to use a matte cool tone powder in a taupey shade, and this is softly going into the hollow of the cheek to make it look like a shadow. If you're fair, you can use bone beige, and if you're slightly darker, you can use something like shadowy. I'll link these and all the products below for you. For the lips, I'm going to use the Buxom Plump Line lip pencils. Usually when I'm prepping the skin, I'll put a balm on the lip, but I completely forgot because I was too busy chatting away to Rianna, so I got distracted. So make sure you do that to prep your lips in advance. They'll have time to soften while you're doing the rest of your makeup. I'm using a muted pinky shade on the entire lip and then going in with a slightly more coral shade on the centre. I prefer to use lip liners because they last a lot longer. I then just gently press a little bit of balm over the top to make the lips look nice and hydrated. Using a good setting spray is really important to keep everything in place. You want something that's like a lacquer for your face. I'm using the High Performance Setting Spray by Cover FX. Another one that I love is the Ben Nye Final Seal. Once I've misted the face, I like to press that setting spray into the skin using a powder puff. And that completes my beautiful bridal look on the beautiful Rianna. As I mentioned earlier, I did create a quick bridal hairstyle to go with this look, which I will post up separately. What do you guys think of this bridal look? Would you wear it on your wedding day? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Everything I've used will be listed and linked below. You can tap my face on screen to subscribe to my channel. You can also see my previous tutorial, and if you'd like to follow me outside of YouTube, my social handles are on screen. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!